Here's what's making headlines in Charlotte County. Some municipalities say new property assessment reforms fall short of their expectations.
Opposition members accuse the Premier of threatening the St. Stephen Collaborative Care Clinic.
And a look at shoreline protection and tick prevention in our region. Welcome to This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth.
We begin this week with some reforms, some long-awaited reforms at the provincial level to property tax assessment.
Okay, you've been following this closely, Nathalie. What is your takeaway on how municipalities are feeling after this news?
I've been following property assessment for what feels like most of my career because this is something that the municipalities have been advocating for, right? 85% of their revenue comes from property tax assessment bills. So that bill that you pay on your property every year goes towards funding municipalities and their budgets. But they did unveil some new reforms, and it sort of fell short of what I think municipalities, or at least what several municipalities have said were their expectations. So one of the major things that happen is the government has introduced this stabilizer mechanism into property assessment. So when you get a tax rate, which is set by your local municipality, that is what you're charged per $100 of assessment. And so when you get your tax bill, that amount is based on that tax rate. And so now what the government has said is they're going to set a tax rate for each municipality. They're going to publish that tax rate. And they have an automatic lever as well, that if assessment grows higher than inflation, they can automatically lower the tax rate. But this list is going to get published, and they're going to have to justify to the government and to the public sort of why they want to increase their tax rate, for what reason. So that is a bit of a sticking point for municipalities right now.
Okay, so when we look at the operational budget, let's say, for a municipality, why would this tax rate be such a concern that the province is more involved with creating it?
So there's three budgets, really: operational, utility, and capital. And capital is what most people are interested in. It has a lot of the infrastructure projects, recreation. It's really what they're looking for. And so if you're, like, let's take, for example, the municipality of St. Andrews. I think it's roughly a little more than $6 million, right? And that property assessment has been frozen. So their budget has not increased or decreased by that much in the last little bit. I think last year, potentially, it was 1.5%. 1.5% increase in assessment. And the reason that still happens is if you renovate or you build new, your assessment, you don't, that freeze doesn't apply to you. And so what that means is if they're required to lower it, which it sort of seems like they will be, they'll get less money. That's just how it works. That's the double-edged sort of property assessment. You raise it, the municipality gets more money to do more stuff. You lower it, you get less money. And so then it becomes a decision of what do we cut in order to make that work. And municipalities don't want to cut. And their argument is also that the government has downloaded a lot more responsibility through reform, and they don't have a way to pay for it. And the other thing is that freeze is going to continue for 2026. So again, another level of uncertainty for municipalities as part of these reforms.
I mean, I think it kind of comes at a time when we're dealing with inflation, uncertainty on that level, but also, like you said, post-amalgamation, where there's more responsibilities for municipalities, more area to cover. But on top of that, we've just had municipal elections, local elections. So I'm not sure if everyone was necessarily at the table when they wanted to be to have this conversation. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and they're asking for a second round.
Right.
They want to go back and they want to have this conversation again because it fell, what the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick is saying is very short of their expectations. And we were able to speak with the president of the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick on that stabilizer mechanism. Take a listen.
Obviously, with that coming in, there's a very heavy provincial hand on the wheel there, which certainly does not increase the autonomy of municipalities. And the thing is, most municipalities do that anyway in terms of, determining what their tax rate, and more importantly, the tax burden on our residents and our businesses are going to be. We're already the most transparent and accountable order of government when it comes to what our fiscal situation looks like. We do it in open session. We spend a lot of time engaging New Brunswickers and educating them on what happens during the budget process. So I know in Grand Bay Westfield, as an example, we figure out what it takes to run the municipality, and it takes what it takes. Unfortunately, it's an expensive proposition, and things aren't getting cheaper. As an example, asphalt has quadrupled in price since 2021, and generally the transportation budget is one of the biggest line items in our budget. We figure out what it takes, if there are any inflationary pressures that we need to address through that. And then if there are any level of service increases that are a priority of council or a priority of our residents. We then figure out, what kind of an increase that might be over last year. And then we determine whether we can justify that or frankly, whether it's affordable for our residents. So that generally the municipal sector across the province is already doing that. And in terms of justifying it, we're already doing that. We do it in open session of council. And frankly, I do it every time I walk the dog, every time I'm in the grocery store, and every time I'm at a kids' sport competition. So that justification piece is already there.
I also asked about the diversification of revenue, something municipalities have long advocated for.
As I'm sure you know, Nathalie, after talking to me for so long, that New Brunswick municipalities are 85% reliant on property tax for their revenues. There's no flexibility there. And it's certainly not a sustainable situation. To give you some additional context, Nova Scotia is 63% reliant. Alberta is 44% reliant on property tax, which gives them a whole lot more flexibility. And it certainly reduces the burden on our property taxpayers. Again, like I always say, it's our residential property taxpayers in particular that bear the majority of that burden. So one of the reasons for that is that New Brunswick in particular has been the subject of reducing and narrowing provincial grants over the last half century. I mean, with fiscal reform, we've made some strides forward there, but there's still a lot of as my father would say, a lot of the elephant left to eat.
That was Brittany Merrifield, the mayor of Grand Bay Westfield and the president of the Union of Municipalities, speaking to me about property assessment reforms. So you can get an idea there that there's some frustration on the part of municipalities, right? This justification piece, the lack of diversification, right? Wanting all of that industrial tax revenue to come down to municipalities. I do believe you'll hear from the minister in a few minutes about that second wave of reforms that is coming, but this one certainly didn't meet the bar. And there was a lot of reaction to that. The minister would like to suggest otherwise. But, Fundy Shore's Mayor Denny Cogswell said this stabilizer mechanism represented an overreach on the part of the provincial government. They want these governments to be independent bodies, but they're sort of, parenting them in a way that they don't appreciate. They want autonomy over their tax rates because they're the ones that are going to decide, what local roads get paved, what type of infrastructure they need to invest in their water and sewer. Do they want to build a new recreational complex? Do they want to, all of the things that you enjoy in your community, trash collection, being able to have a parks and rec director like here in St. Andrews, all of that comes out of your tax dollars, and so they want that independence to be able to make those decisions for themselves, and they were sort of not appreciative of the government's decision on that side. Incoming mayor-elect Steve Neal also said, this was not what we were expecting, which was true property assessment reform. Steve Bachman said it was a bit, he sort of landed in the middle. Mayor Steve Bachman of St. Stephen sort of landed in the middle because the way that they do their budget is it's item forward. So they sort of present what they want to do and then they allocate money to it. So they sort of do that justification piece ahead of the budget. And then if they have money for it, great. If they don't have money for it, then it's sort of like not on the table. And so that sort of helps them keep an even keel on their tax rate. So they're less worried about it. I did get to speak with the minister, and he said these new changes provide stability in the system and protection to New Brunswickers.
really what we're trying to do, Nathalie, after many years of huge increases on the assessments and then huge increases on property tax bills, we're trying to come up with a system that is more stable, predictable, transparent, and fair for homeowners, for New Brunswickers. Municipalities certainly have been well served by this government during my time as minister. We came forward with a fiscal reform package this year that gave them an additional $63 million in revenue, new money, that has certainly helped them. And now I think we looked after municipalities, and now it's important to look after homeowners, the people of New Brunswick who need help after telling us that assessments and property tax bills are out of control.
I asked about the circumstances in which he would approve or deny a tax increase to a municipality.
What we're going to see as we move into 2027 and the municipal budget year this fall is that municipalities are going to be cognizant of that, and they are going to try to take advantage of lowering their tax rates for their residents. Just about every one of them campaigned on that, so I would find it difficult to see where they would say we want to raise the tax rate. But in those instances, and we don't know how frequent that will be or how many there will be out of the 77, if there is a need for them to go over the stabilizer number, they will be able to show that to me and show that to the residents of their community. And I assume that the residents will accept that if it's clear and clearly articulated as to why they need more money than the stabilizer rate. But I think we're going to see, like we did through the freeze when there was a hue and cry at the beginning that this was going to be devastating to municipalities. Didn't turn out to be the case. And I suspect that municipal governments are going to see when they go through this process, we are still getting the increase that we require. And of course, new construction is exempt from that as well. So that's additional funding. So that's true, tangible growth that we as a government want to see. And certainly all municipal governments encourage that as well. So that's additional funding that they'll be able to get over and above the stabilizer rate.
I also asked whether the stabilizer mechanism would place unnecessary pressure on municipalities to side with the provincial government on their tax rates.
Certainly, I mean, as I said at the beginning, Nathalie, at its core, when assessments go up, we believe that tax rates should come down. And that's what this is designed to do, is to protect ratepayers from these huge spikes in assessments and property tax bills that they've experienced since the pandemic. The previous government didn't do anything about it. We campaigned in 2024 on an overhaul of the property tax system. I can tell you, I heard it repeatedly at the doors in my riding of Quispam-Sis. New Brunswickers were counting on us to come up with a system that will be more stable, predictable, transparent, and fair for them. And I believe we've done that.
That was Local Government Minister Aaron Kennedy speaking to me about property assessment reforms. So I'm going to be very excited to watch budget process in October.
I was going to say, when we look at the councils, for instance, St. Andrews, we still have an election. Obviously, some of you might be watching this after the by-election on Monday, so we hope everyone went out to vote. But when we look at St. Stephen, too, pretty much an entire new council, save for Wade Greenlaw, who is an incumbent. So it'll be interesting to see how, when we look at a council like Grand Manan, very similar to the one we had before. Eastern Charlotte is a mix of people that were at the table and some new faces. But it'll be interesting to see when it's a full new council, for the most part, how they handle something like this right off the bat.
This is drastic change. And I think you'll find that municipalities will struggle. They were nervous last year, right, because of the freeze. Now this introduces another sort of level of uncertainty. And so I'm going to be interested to see how they respond to this. I'm going to be interested to see whether or not they're going to, speak up about it if it is causing problems for them. I do know that Eastern Charlotte recently approved a letter to be sent to the Premier and Local Government Minister about these reforms. I believe the Union of Municipalities of New Brunswick has initiated a letter writing campaign to sort of get that going. So it's going to be very interesting, and I'm going to be watching and following this story.
Well, we look forward to all of your coverage.
We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to take a look at the opposition alleging the Premier threatened to take away the St. Stephen Clinic.
I'm going to start with the Premier just threatened that member to take away her collaborative care clinic. Will she stand up and admit to that?
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon. So we're going to go to St. Stephen, kind of, but we're also going to go to the legislature because Lukas and I were at the legislature on Thursday, and there was a bit of a kerfuffle.
Yes, I have heard. I've heard from a number of people who saw this online, watched on television, though we're not quite sure exactly what some of us heard. My hearing is not great, so set the stage and tell everyone at home who has missed it what happened.
Sure. So on June 11th, during members' statements, the MLA for St. Croix, Kathy Bacchus, who we all know, stood up to ask some questions or make a statement, and she started with the various cuts to tourism, but then ended on, don't even get me started on the clinics the government has opened, because St. Stephen was one of the first 10 promised within the first 18 months of this government's mandate. It is open, technically, but it does not have the proper space, and so it is limited in space and it is limited in capacity, and so it cannot take on new patients or new physicians because there's nowhere to put them. And I'll get into that a little bit later. She stood up, she gave her statement, but then towards the end of her statement, there's a bit of jeering. You can hear the other side of the house side that she's on, the opposition side, start to get loud, and you can hear Glenn Savoie shouting, "Would you like to lose it? Would you like to lose it? Would you like to lose it?" And he, in that moment, alleges the Premier threatened to take away the St. Stephen Clinic.
And Glenn Savoie, for people who don't follow closely, is the Progressive Conservative.
Yeah, he's the outgoing interim leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of New Brunswick. And there will be a new leader selected in October, which means that this will be his last time sitting as leader of the opposition.
I'm going to do a total tangent here and tell everyone at home, please watch our interviews with Monaghan and Alain. They are both vying for leadership of the Conservative Party. It's playing on Town and Province right now, but you can find them on our YouTube channel as well. So yes, half-hour interviews with them both, same questions asked. Back to this story.
Yeah. So the allegation is that she said, "How would you like to lose it?" And I'm going to play the video for you, and we're going to do a little bit of forensics, because I understand there was a little bit of confusion online about why the Courier used the word alleged. And I'm going to explain that for a couple of reasons. So we don't have direct confirmation from the Premier. We asked for an interview. One was not granted. We went back and asked for confirmation that the comment was made in the House. It was not provided. We were directed to the transcript of question period, which is known to all of us legislative nerds as Hansard, it does not have that statement in there because, as we both know, her mic was not on. It was on the member for St. Croix when the statement was made. So we're just going to show you the video. I'm going to let you listen to Kathy's statement, and her statement ends at the 28:01 mark, but the comment was made just before the end of her speech. You can sort of hear her pause, and you can hear the ruckus. So here's Kathy Bacchus.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This week my colleagues have presented lists of broken promises by this government, highlighting where the Premier has fumbled, flopped, and failed. Those broken promises are compounded by the random decisions foisted suddenly on the public, like the cuts to vet services, closure of popular tourism destinations, and the withdrawal of funding to the Red Cross Equipment Loan Program, to name a few. These decisions are widespread and they affect every corner of New Brunswick, from Sheriff Andrews' house in Minister's Island in St. Andrews, North Lake Park, to Cape and Rage, to Anchorage Park, and the closure of Agupure in Sussex. And don't get me started on the clinics the government has announced it has opened. The one in St. Stephen may have been announced, but it isn't scheduled to open until January of next year. Maybe. When will this Premier stop making cuts and irrational decisions and start working for the people of New Brunswick? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So if you were listening closely there, you wouldn't have heard her say that. What you would have been hearing is the interim leader repeating the comment, getting agitated, getting loud, the whole other side of the house. So we're going to slow it down, and you're going to listen to just that section one more time. Take a listen.
When will this Premier stop making cuts and irrational decisions and start working for the people of New Brunswick? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So just for clarity, who you're hearing make that statement is the interim leader. He's repeating what she allegedly said back to him. So back to her. So in journalism, standards and practices require independent confirmation. I've listened to the audio, you've just listened to the audio. You cannot hear the Premier make that statement. So no independent verification, no confirmation from the source means alleged or accused. And I know that that may seem unfair to people who think that we should trust what the opposition is saying. It's not that we don't believe that it was said. This is just our standards and practices. We have to be able to independently verify that information.
And I think, I think it's fair to point out too to people at home, you would have to do the same in many cases,
That's
whether
right.
it was a court case as well. And innocent until proven guilty is a kind of mentality you have to think. It's not anyone taking sides. It's also our liability too. We can easily be sued, as we are a news organization that must make sure everything is factual. So there's a lot of reasons why you would use allegedly. In fact, we must be able to prove it before we are able to say 100%. And I think, in a way, this speaks to the very point we're making right now, which is we're following a kerfuffle, maybe something that was said or not, that was caught on a hot mic or not. But I think it speaks to why we don't respond in the same way online to, for instance, some of the criticism we saw in comments saying, you're saying allegedly taking sides. Diplomacy has a purpose. It has I hope that more people online practice it too. Since we are friends and neighbors, consider where we're coming from when we do our jobs. And I think I always appreciate that because of this job, I don't react in a way that's hot-headed. Maybe that's my nature before this job. But it's made me a better person for that. And I think that's something for all of us to take from a situation like that. Sometimes just keeping your cool is the best thing you can do. That goes to both sides in this situation. And it goes to all of you online that bother to not read an article and comment. Everyone is responsible for losing their head in these situations. And that trickles down from the ledge to online, where people can behave in a certain way, without even reading the full article. So we are all responsible, and I mean this for everyone here in this province, to practice a level of diplomacy. That doesn't mean you're taking sides.
Right, and just a couple of things. I did respond to a few of those comments because I wanted to, and I wasn't,
Calmly, yes.
I wasn't agitated, I wasn't irritated. I wanted to explain to the people why we used that word. I'm doing it here again for that exact reason, because I need the public to understand that I didn't just publish this article. I spent a couple of days on it. I went back and forth. I even went back to the opposition and said, I think there was a comment about Baucus saying we all heard it. And it is possible they all heard it, but I confirmed it with the 3 MLAs that were sitting the closest to the Premier in the front row. And I also confirmed it with Ms. Baucus. So I did my due diligence. There is no more digging that can be done. I've listened to the audio. I read the transcript. I've done all the checks and balances, and it's very important that we did that. The other thing that I want to reiterate is both myself and our summer reporter Lukas were in the gallery when this alleged comment happened. Now we were above, and it does get hard to hear when you're upstairs if you're not wearing a translation device. And we weren't wearing a translation device, but we also did not hear that comment. So, and in fact, I went back and I read the Telegraph Journal story, and even in scrums with the Premier later, she did not directly respond to whether or not she said that comment. So there's no confirmation externally. So all of that to say, this is a very disappointing situation for the constituency of St. Stephen. This is a clinic that is sort of sitting vacant. People can see it. It's in the Charlotte Mall. People can see that there's no construction happening, and there isn't any construction happening. Horizon has been very honest and said the site plans have just been approved by the family care team. We're meeting this week to start ordering supplies. We're still on target for January of 2027. And they have been honest from the set, right? The Premier has said to us in a scrum, it'll be open before the snow melts. The snow is gone. Then we asked her again when she came in St. Andrews in March of 2026, and I said, Horizon is telling us one thing, you're saying this other thing. What's the truth here? And she said, I'm still looking for those renovations to happen quicker than officially anticipated. So it's just this has been a series of promises that have not been kept. And so it is also Ms. Baucus's job to criticize the government. That's her job as opposition. That's any opposition's role. And so this clinic when we found out that it opened in February, it had taken 310 patients off the list. Since November of 2025, when it was officially announced, it has taken 733 patients off the list, and that is less than anticipated. And there are still 2,700 patients unattached in St. Stephen's. So there's a long way to go, and we're a little more than 6 or 7 months away from opening day.
And I guess that's where, I think that there is a lesson to be learned from this entire situation, which is right now we are lost in the kerfuffle as opposed to the actual issue, which is the fact that we don't have a fully operational collaborative care clinic yet in St. Stephen. While it's in process, we were at the opening, which feels like 3/4 of a year ago, right?
Yes.
Which was in the hospital. And not much has evolved. There's been some evolution, but again, there's reason to hold the province to account for the slow process of this. But when we get caught up in fighting and who said what, as opposed to who did or didn't do what, which is really the issue, right? And the same goes for online. I find it really disappointing when we as a community who know each other, know you're journalists, I know what an exceptional journalist you are. I know that the word allegedly also doesn't have a negative connotation. That's something you interpret as a reader. Allegedly, if you decide allegedly means doubt, it doesn't. It just means it hasn't been fully confirmed. That's all it means. So consider your own prejudices towards a word when you are the one interpreting it. These are words journalists have to use. So please understand that when you're following someone's reporting, there's liability and there is process, and we must follow it the same way government should too. Also, why I understand the role of oppositions, but I honestly wish the world would just get better at getting along, because the polar opposites are just getting further and further apart, and we've got to get to a place where we can actually move things forward as opposed to just getting lost in the fight. And that's my 2 cents on it.
Well, and it is hitting home a little bit in the sense that, I spoke with Municipal District of St. Stephen Mayor Steve Bakken about this, and he said he hopes that it was a comment made in the heat of the moment, and that, the Charlotte County Hospital Foundation, of which he is a board member, and has raised millions of dollars for hospital equipment at the Charlotte County Hospital, which I'm sure many of us have been able to take advantage of when we've been visiting the hospital. He says because of all of that work and because of the statement, he says the province owes them that respect, and the people of St. Croix deserve health care. And I think to some degree that was also Ms. Bacchus's point, and she was disappointed in the reaction as well, because this isn't about the premier. This is about health care for the people of St. Croix, and so it is not objectively okay to threaten someone's health care simply because you're being criticized in a public way. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to go to the beach in Rockwood Park. This work here is an intersection between the environmental and the restoration initiatives, and that community piece, right? This is such a community asset for us here in Charlotte County and Southwest New Brunswick. Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth. Last week, I had the opportunity to go to New River Beach, which is one of our most beautiful provincial parks. I am a little biased because it is in our neck of our woods, but I think a lot of people know the sandcastle competition that happens there every year. And
she had the fun assignment, and we're about to talk about the weird assignment I went on later.
Yeah, both of these assignments involve grass, but in my case, we were actually looking at how the beach itself could be saved from erosion. So this was a collaborative project between the Department of the Environment and Parks and Bees, so tourism as well, along with ECW, which is based in Blacks Harbor, and it is this incredible nonprofit that so many of us know and love. They've done a lot of work over the years on climate change and erosion of the coastline and how we can prevent that as best as possible. In this case, Caitlin Maurer, their executive director, was there to explain how using native plants and so just putting him in the right place can actually work with nature. So use stuff that comes from this part of the world to actually stop this erosion in a way that's something man-made and maybe not tried and tested the way Mother Nature has done for millions and millions and millions of years, could do something positive to our environment. And so far they've been able to save about 5 meters of coastline.
That's amazing. I mean, when you think about coastlines and you think about Charlotte County, the two sort of go hand in hand. So it's exciting to see that they're sort of coming up with ways to naturally make that happen, as opposed to man-made infrastructure, which tends to degrade and sort of, I think, further pollute our environment.
And Minister Lepage, Environment Minister, was there, along with Minister Isabel Torrio of Tourism. Both of them are from coastal communities as well, so it was really interesting to have these conversations.
We can never move as fast as for the erosion. The coastal erosion, it depends on natural weather. It's fine, there's no erosion that much, but then we're getting, because of climate change, we're getting more storms, we're getting more wind, we're getting more rain. So everything has an impact on our coastal line. So we have to protect them, but we can't do it alone as a government. We need the partners.
Yes, because we want to have regenerative tourism, which means that the beautiful landscapes we have, the beautiful locations have to be kept healthy. And we want to have an environmental angle to this because we want to keep our beaches, our every location we have, we want to keep them as natural as possible. So residents of New Brunswick, but also tourists can enjoy them in a natural way.
And they were talking about their areas having different approaches. So what they're really trying to do is work with community groups as well as volunteers. So there were volunteers on site as well. My dad came with me, which was fun, Bob Hogarth, and I got to spend the day together. So it was really fun to take my dad on assignment with me. I've always wanted to take my dad to work, so I thought, what better day than at New River Beach, and we can help plant some of this grass too. So we got to shovels in sand. I took my shoes off for a news story and just walked on the beach, which was great. And really got
did
to
not take my shoes
part
off.
in something that was fun and exciting. And but before we get to Lukas's story in the grass, I will tell you that I talked to Kaylin Maurer, again, Executive Director of ECW, who explained why looking at nature for answers is sometimes the best solution.
The park reached out to us because we have some local expertise and local knowledge in local restoration, but also like the types of plants that'll even survive in this habitat. Like, right, that's something that's really specific sometimes to different types of ecosystems. So they had some engineered designs of what the challenges were, and basically they brought us into the fold to say, how can we make this the most successful it can be from a really local perspective, which is really nice because oftentimes you live in a place and you really are invested in the way that the outcomes happen. So it was just really nice to be part of it.
We are well aware that ECW has done many climate change studies for especially Southwest New Brunswick. How will you monitor the success of whether this is working to the degree that you want it to?
Sure. There's a lot of things that will contribute to the success or more or less success of what happens, of the outcomes, right? Like there's things that we can't predict or change, like storm events, that sorts of things. But really what we want to see is that the plants are healthy year over year. The plants are growing. The dune is healthy and growing, right? It's an extremely fragile type of ecosystem, right? It's a pile of sand, right? If you think of a pile of sand, it's very fragile. And so it's something that's really delicate, and if the dune is growing and becoming stronger and those grasses are established and the roots are really holding on, you can picture kind of a net of roots just like gathering all the sand up, and so when we start to see those things looking more natural and looking more established, then we'll consider that a success.
That was Kaylin Maurer, Executive Director of ECW. And I understand that you and Lukas also went on a grass-related assignment that also might have something to do with climate change, but let's get to that first.
Yeah, so the audience is becoming quite familiar with what I'm afraid of and what I don't enjoy, and you're about to add another box to that list, and that's ticks, bugs.
Anything bothers her more than fairies.
That's right. And so Lukas Kohler, who has been a summer reporter here for a few summers, came to me with this idea, and him and I went to St. John to go find some ticks. So tell me how you managed to rope me into this story and why you wanted to do the story.
Well, I knew that we've been seeing more ticks in New Brunswick. So I found Sarah Makepeace, a conservation field technician with the Nature Trust of New Brunswick. And she showed us a few techniques in the field to find ticks, and she talked to us about her concerns.
Right, and so she talked a little bit about, why they're becoming more prevalent, why we're seeing that increase. Could you explain why we're sort of noticing it increasing over time?
So the frost season in New Brunswick, at least, is beginning later and it's ending earlier. So we have just a shorter frost season. That means that there's more time for ticks to thrive. Wow. And we're seeing the range that they can survive in expand. So they're finding new places in New Brunswick to live.
Okay. And we did get to do something extra special. We participated in tick dragging. Can you explain what tick dragging is? Can you already tell? I'm having the most amazing time. Tell us what tick dragging is.
So she showed us this technique that she uses. So she took 3 PVC pipes and she pieced them together, and then she strung a white cotton sheet over these PVC pipes, and then strung a rope through the pipes, and then she took that device and dragged it along the forest edge where there's tall grass, and she would scan it every once in a while looking for ticks. And she said that a researcher will take 50 ticks from one area to study them.
Is that like looking for types of disease? What kind of things are they looking for? Because I know Lyme disease, obviously, is something where we have a large deer population too. It can be unnerving for a lot of people. So what are they looking for when they study these ticks? Yeah,
she had a vial of alcohol that she said she was going to drop ticks into if we found them, to kill and preserve them.
Not the kind you can drink.
No, ethyl alcohol. Yeah. And she said that when they bring them back to the lab, they study them for disease and pathogens. So she said that deer ticks, black-legged ticks, 50% of them carry Lyme in New Brunswick, and that's what she would study.
So how common is that particular tick here? Is that
is the most common tick in New Brunswick?
Yeah, it's the most common.
Okay.
And she talked about, there are the most proactive step that you can take with ticks, and I want you to explain what she says is the best tool that you have when it comes to, because we're not going to be able to avoid ticks.
So Natalie's strategy is staying inside.
I'm not going outside ever again. But for those of us who are, what's the best tool that they have?
She said to be aware of how ticks behave and where they like to be. So ticks, they have a specific thing in their bodies that allow them to detect other organisms. So they detect things like CO2, moisture, and heat. So whenever they detect another organism, they'll put up their arms and they'll wait for another animal to walk by, and that's called questing. And
it's almost cute if you think of it in those terms.
And when another animal walks by, they'll latch on, and then they'll look for a part of your body that is thinner, like your skin is thinner, so they can bite down.
Right. This is nightmare fuel.
Okay, so let's say you're in that situation. You've done everything you're supposed to do. You put your socks over your pants. You've got
shirt in your pants.
You're ready, but you're in the woods, but you have a tick on you. What do you do?
Well, you should use a tick removing tool. They have specific tools to remove ticks, but if you don't have one of those, tweezers work fine. And if you really don't have tweezers and you're in a pinch, you can pinch it.
Okay. And how?
Just pinch, make sure you get the head out.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the most important part.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I will continue to prevent ticks by not going outside.
And if you've had it on you for a while,
yes,
more than 24 hours, I'd say, send it in for testing.
Okay. Where do you send it?
Well, that's an issue that we've had recently because the vet clinic is gone.
Right. So maybe another This Week Uncut, we will cover where we send our ticks in alcohol?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Lukas has a few follow-ups that he's going to make based on this story, and there's some things that he hasn't said today because we don't want to give too much away. But we're still working on this story. But certainly, she mentioned it is a problem that they can't, like, that the cuts to the veterinary program are going to impact the identification of ticks, especially ones who carry pathogens. And so that's going to be a problem that we're definitely going to be addressing in another story for sure. But the good news is he didn't find any ticks when he was tick dragging, and I didn't have any on my body.
That is some good news.
There's one thing that I wanted to mention.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in 2025, this is a scary statistic, but we found, or the government found, not we, found that we had the highest rate of Lyme ever, at 23.5 individuals per 100,000. So that's 23.5 cases of Lyme in 100,000 individuals.
And that was up from...
And that was up from the previous 5-year period, which had an average of 12.3 cases.
Oh my God. I have so many more questions because, I mean, I'd love to know what the symptoms are. But once I thought I had Lyme's disease, and it turned out I was really just lazy. I was just feeling tired, and but yeah, I wonder what you look for if it's something, and how long would it take to get Lyme's disease from having it? Can you prevent it if the tick has just bitten you?
Yeah, well, the first thing to do is get antibiotics if you think that you got Lyme, or not even if you think you got Lyme, you have to get antibiotics as soon as possible.
Yeah. Okay. And you know, getting the tick off is the most important part, right? You know, getting it off your body as soon as possible is critical in sort of, you know, separating you from the pathogen that the tick has, the bacteria, right? Getting that off your body is the most important part. And the next step is obviously to have yourself seen by a physician or your nurse practitioner or at your local clinic for antibiotics.
And since I'm a proud dog mom, I'm going to say check your dogs too, because your fur babies also, they're often the ones running through the grass while the humans stay on the trail itself. So another good pointer.
Maud and I are going to have a chat.
I'm going to go to the beach.
And dogs have a tick preventative medicine, so humans don't have that, but you can get your dog's medicine that will keep ticks off them.
Well, thank you, Lukas, for this wonderful report that will keep Nathalie spending most of the summer indoors. But I feel like I can venture out with a little more know-how, so thanks so much.
And here's Sarah Makepeace at Rockwood Park in St. John.
So what we're seeing with the tick population, as we've noticed the impacts from climate change and we've seen our environment changing, we're seeing range expansion. So we're seeing more suitable habitat for the tick species we have in the province, and we're seeing more ticks. So with the milder winters we've had, the shorter frost seasons during those winters, we're seeing in spring the ticks are coming sooner and we're seeing more of them.
Yeah. And how can you tell the different tick species apart, and what kinds of ticks do we have here?
So in general, I think Canada, overall across Canada, we have about 40 tick species. So New Brunswick, I'm not sure of the exact number, but there are a lot of species out west that we don't have here. So mainly in New Brunswick, we have the black-legged tick, so the deer tick. We have the dog tick, also like Dermacenter species, those are the dog ticks, and then we have squirrel ticks and groundhog ticks, and those are the most common ones that we have here. And to tell them apart, so ticks are very small, as you can tell, but they do have like morphological differences, and so they have scutums, so that's kind of the hard shell on the back of the tick, and so that will be different throughout species, and that will be different between the males and females within one species. And then also we look at their mouth parts. So they have palps at their mouth, which is kind of like their biting bits, and so those will change among species, and just the shape of their mouth parts as well.
And how can people at home tell ticks apart?
It can be very tricky. I recommend going to the Government of New Brunswick, Public Health. They've put out a Be Tick Smart kind of campaign, and if you go to their websites, they have a lot of resources and a lot of different things on the different ticks, and they have pictures of them, so you'd be able to see that. What really helps is if you can have, I looked at the camera, what really helps is if you can have like a hand lens. I think I have one with me. Let me just check. This is my field book, yeah. So if you can have a hand lens or some type of microscope like this, then you can look at it closer, and so then you're able to see what details are there. Because you can't really go based off color, because ticks can look like different species can look the same color. Sometimes they don't have the same coloring. But that helps, just being able to see up close. So even like on your phone, if you can zoom in and like take a video, that can help you too if you have a good quality phone.
That was Sarah Makepeace, a conservation field technician with the Nature Trust of New Brunswick. Hope that story didn't bug you.
Well, it means I'll be spending a lot of time at the beach this summer for sure, maybe less time in the forest. But no, honestly, Lukas, that was great to get that information and just to feel a little more prepared given the circumstances of this summer having a uptick on ticks. Is that fair to say?
That's a mouthful, is what it is. Yeah. We too many T's all together, too many Icks together.
Ticks.
Yeah.
I don't want a mouthful of ticks.
Yeah. That's absolutely very fair. Thank you so much, Lukas. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to take a look at what the team is doing next week.
Welcome back to This Week Uncut. I'm Vicki Hogarth.
And I'm Nathalie Sturgeon. We're back into the full swing of things. Councils are starting to get going again. Meetings are starting to happen slowly but surely.
And it's that summer season where every weekend there seems to be something exciting going on too. So I'm going to head up this week to Macadam to the train station, which is really exciting for the 125th anniversary. And I understand there are going to be model trains there, maybe some railway pie, definitely some railway pie. So ready for that. And yeah, you're right. We've got the election. If you're watching this after Monday, then you know the results already of the St. Andrews by-election. So that's also exciting. I early voted.
I did not, because
233 people early voted. That's 16% of eligible voters. So I don't know if that, for a by-election, I should ask if that is a by-elections don't bring out a lot of votes. But
for the record, 62% of the eligible voting population in St. Andrews voted in the mayoral election on May 11th. So you have your target. Please come out and vote. Councillors matter way more than who the mayor is. The mayor is sort of a guiding, pillar in that chamber. They're the ones that make the decisions. You want people around that chamber that align with your values, that align with how you want to see the community progress forward. Vote, because it matters.
That's true. And when you think about it, if we're at 16% now, that's a ways to go on election day, and people tend to vote early in New Brunswick. So yeah, we want to see that number reach the same, or it just seems there's a little people that vote. So again, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, so there's a few things on my agenda. The WARF meeting is coming up next week, which will be the first presentation of this new design through Fundy Engineering to the public. The town is going to receive as much feedback as possible. Some of the work is going to already be underway to get underway in the fall, just because they sort of know what needs to be done there, and it's not going to change aesthetically what that part of the WARF looks like. You're going to be going back and you're going to be seeing that WARF approach, sort of how they want to do it. It does involve infill. I don't want anyone to panic. It is nowhere near the amount of infill that we would have seen in the previous design, but there is infill involved. And we've been told by council that armor stone is not part of the plan. Armor stone is off the table. There will be some sort of either ready rock, which is like a cement installation, or they will go back to wood cribbing, which is what you have there now. But certainly it is decaying and it is falling apart, so they want to get that replaced. I did, given all of this ruckus around the St. Stephen Clinic, I have filed a right to information and protection of privacy act request. I have not received a response, and I doubt anyone from the department is watching, but if you are, please respond to my email so I can get the clock ticking. It will be a while before we get a response. It usually is, but we're sort of hoping that we can have a little bit more insight into how sort of we've arrived at this path. And in terms of the council, they'll be sworn in on June the 29th. So that will be,
so it's a ways.
We'll have an episode before that happens, but certainly the St. Andrews Council will be sworn in on June 29th.
And just like we said, get out to vote. I love this show because we can talk directly to you. And aside from just doing the news, we get to talk to the public. And aside from St. Andrews Ward 3 residents making sure you vote, everyone who came to the WARF meetings and council meetings last year, come to the WARF meetings this year. This is our chance to show all of the town, all of council, that everyone is engaged the same way in a new process from the get-go. So let's be a united town and do this together.
And seasonal residents, this is your time. They've specifically chosen this summer because our population doubles in size, because many of you are away in the winter months. So this is your opportunity to come and to voice your opinions. We sort of heard a lot of feedback last time that, seasonal residents had been sort of left out of the equation. I also do want to say, Steve Bachman is scheduled to come in on Tuesday for the first town and province of the new mayors that existed. He's first in line. I know John will always be down, but certainly we're gonna have Steve on the couch very soon.
Exciting. Well, I mean, that'll be our first town and province St. Stephen too, which is worth pointing out because we've had Eastern Charlotte and St. Andrews for so long. But I'm very excited to have St. Stephen, the mayor of St. Stephen, come sit on the couch for half an hour, and I hope that the public enjoys that as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back in the host chair and asking some questions, especially about St. Stephen, which we sort of haven't been able to do. Although I did speak to former Mayor Alan McEachern at the groundbreaking of the hotel, and he said he might just come and have a chat with us. So
that's exciting. Okay, there you go. So maybe 2 St. Stephen Town and Province episodes coming
They say
up.
it's the hope that kills you, but I hope for sure that he will come and he will have that conversation with us. The stakes are a lot lower now that he's not sitting in that chair, and I think it would be an insightful conversation to have with him now that his term is over, 14 years in that at the council chamber. So it would be an insightful conversation.
Yeah, and again, great coverage too on the new hotel groundbreaking. That's exciting for St. Stephen too to see this get underway. I'm sure we'll be following the entire development, but really exciting time for St. Stephen. A lot on the horizon.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on This Week Uncut. I'm Nathalie Sturgeon.
And I'm Vicki Hogarth.
We'll see you next week.